Well, as you probably heard about, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has justified giving the go-ahead to Heathrow's third runway by saying that air travel is getting greener. That's due to a new fuel called SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel. Now, a lot of it's made in Lincolnshire, and demand is expected to take off in the next decade. So, is it the silver bullet that will cut carbon and let us fly guilt-free? Well, some aren't convinced. Here's Transport correspondent Spencer Stokes.
Could the future of green air travel be in the deep fat fryer at your local fish shop? Used cooking oil is one way of producing sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF for short. You can also make it from household waste or extract it from corn. The refining process takes place at this plant at South Killinghome in Lincolnshire. It's an industry in its infancy, but the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, says it's one reason why she's backed Heathrow expansion and the reopening of Doncaster Airport.
Sustainable aviation fuel means that we can reduce carbon emissions from flying. Sustainable aviation fuel only reduces carbon emissions by 70%. Sustainable aviation and economic growth go hand in hand.
But those figures are disputed because SAF has to be mixed with fossil fuel, kerosene, and so carbon savings are reduced.
One who's a chemist.
Research and development of the fuel has taken place here at Sheffield University.
Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, spoke about 70% reduction in carbon. That's currently the maximum theoretical you could get from SAF. You're not legally allowed to use it at the concentrations that you'd need to get 70%. SAF takes a lot of energy to produce. It's not produced everywhere, so you have to ship it around the world to use it. So there's a significant number of challenges.
Sustainable aviation-fuelled aircraft have already taken to the skies. This transatlantic crossing in 2023 was fuelled by 100% SAF. Airlines see it as one way of cutting emissions in an industry that's responsible for 7% of greenhouse gases in the UK. One airline that is switching to using SAF as part of its fuel mix is Leeds-based Jet2. They're investing in a production plant in Cheshire that will make the fuel from household waste, and they hope to cut their carbon emissions by 400,000 tonnes over 15 years. The government has mandated aviation to be 10% fuelled by SAF in 2030 and 22% by 2040. But is that enough to reduce emissions? Richard Sully doesn't think so.
If we met the government mandate for the use of SAF, so the blended amounts of SAF that would go into aviation fuels, by 2030 we'd probably be saving about 3.5%. Carbon. So industry's own growth forecasts blow that out of the water. You will be growing the industry faster than you are saving the carbon. So again, at a time of climate crisis, we have to ask, is this a sensible thing to do?
Reprocessing all that used oil to make SAF is expensive. 3 times the price of fossil fuels currently. That could push up the cost of a holiday flight. So how about fish and chips on Filey Beach?
That sounds very tempting. Thank you, Spencer. I mean, Lee Pitcher, Rachel Reeves isn't really giving us the full story here when she's saying that sustainable aircraft fuel could cut emissions by 70%, because we're an awful long way off that, aren't we?
Well, we're absolutely working towards that, though, aren't we? And we've heard there that it is possible, but there's more to be done. And I always think that, you have to commend the innovation that's out there and the fact that people are investing in sustainable aviation fuels is hugely important. But of course, at the moment, we are, in the same ways when we talk about the EV charging points, we're in a transition phase. Now, if you think about sustainable aviation fuel, that's one thing that we absolutely need to do. We need to keep pushing that. But also, we need to look at the modernisation of the airspace. The more direct that you can fly, the better. The more optimal that you can fly as well. And that in itself starts to reduce the number of carbon emissions that go out.
Hey, Carlisle, do you believe we can ever really have environmentally friendly flying?
I would love to believe it's true, but I also think this is completely nuts. The climate emergency is coming, it's coming fast. I think as it stands, as we've heard, the so-called sustainable aviation fuel industry is a pipe dream, it's a fig leaf, and we seem to be going in exactly the opposite direction if we want to be really serious about action on the climate.
Do you accept this argument that airport expansion, building new airports, reopening some airports like Doncaster, boosts growth?
No, I think this kind of turbocharging of the aviation industry is reckless. I think it's delusional. I think there are far better ways, and there are plenty of, forget the climate scientists, there are plenty of economists who would argue there are far better ways to boost the economy and to do so in better, greener ways. So kind of mass insulation, turbocharging renewable energy, and all that kind of stuff. There's so much better we could do.
Do you accept that? That building new airports, building new runways is not necessarily the best way to grow the economy?
I don't accept all of those arguments. You know, if you look at Doncaster Sheffield Airport, that will create 5,000 jobs. 5,000 jobs is amazing for the local area, for the regional economy. 6,000 indirect jobs within the next sort of 20 years, up to 2050, a cumulative £5 billion gross value added from that airport. People are not going to stop flying. We know that. People will not stop flying. We've got a culture of wanting to explore, wanting to see the world. By flying out to other places in the world, that gives us some of the creativity and the ideas that we need, that we bring back as well to this country. So for me, you know, we're not going to change that culture overnight, and therefore we need to find ways to live with flying, which I think is a great thing, but we need to find ways to do that more environmentally friendly.
Do you accept that growth isn't always going to be green?
Yes, but we need to absolutely stretch to do all we can to be as green as possible. There would be many other ways in which you could generate thousands of jobs and make a big impact in South Yorkshire and your constituency. This is only one option. I kind of feel like the government and the broad political establishment is pretty blinkered on this. I think there are much better ways we could do it. And so I think we can grow the economy and kind of make good things happen and also be sustainable.
Well, for me, what we need to do is use every opportunity to grow our economy. That's massively important right now. People don't have money in their pockets. People need jobs. We need skills. We need to give aspiration to our young adults. And actually, I think you can do it together. I worked in an industry where I was pretty much a climate engineer. I was looking at different ways to engineer that moved away from concrete, that moved to green-blue engineering. I proved that was possible in that job. A lot of people doubted that was possible. We started to reduce flooding. We started to create ways to stop drought. And so for me, it's absolutely doable with the right minds, the right people brought together. And actually, you can create aspiration from doing that and innovation.
We'll see. We shall see. It's a debate that will go on. Ed Carlisle, thanks for joining us today here on Politics North.